Good morning, everyone. Good morning. A very well welcome to everyone here today. Thank you for joining us at the Energy Transition Challenge Fund information section. On behalf of the ETCF team and the entire AECF, we want to welcome you for today's section. Today's section is a very valuable opportunity for us that we're trying to drive the Nigeria clean energy transition. And it's also an opportunity for us to learn more about the ETCF program and what we aim at achieving for this program. At this section, you'll get to learn more about um, us in general. You're going to get to ask questions and interact with the ETCF team. And we're excited to have you. We're excited. And once again, thank you for joining us. Before we dive, dive into the program, into the information section, I'll just like to set in a few housekeeping rules. First, kindly note that this section is being recorded. And also, if you would like to ask your questions, you would have to do that at the webinar chat. So all questions should be at the webinar's chat. If you're experiencing any technical issues, feel free to always message the host and we're more than ready to have you and to assist you in our best capacity. Driving into the webinar section without further ado, I'll be inviting our program lead, our country program lead, in person of Sahad Kamauddin. Saad, you have the floor.
Thanks very much, Tommy, for that very warm introduction, and thanks everyone for making out the time, despite your busy schedule, to join this call. I'm very excited and pleased to see that the number keeps ticking up. I think at the moment we have over 220 people. So it shows the level of excitement and commitment that there is for the market and some of the opportunities that we're looking to raise. So yeah, thanks again for making out the time. Tommy, will you be sharing the slides or should I share from my end?
The slides are coming up, sure.
Okay, thank you very much, David. So I'll basically just be giving you guys a quick run through of who AECF is, because AECF is quite new to this particular market, Nigeria. We've had a lot of experience since 2018 working in East Africa. We've done a few projects in Nigeria, but this is our first countrywide program. So yes, I'll give you guys a brief background on that, and I'll also be introducing the ETCF, which is why we're all here. ETCF stands for Energy Transition Challenge Fund, and it was designed to support Nigeria with its energy transition plan. Brilliant. I can see the slides are up. Thank you very much, guys, for putting together the slides. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. So as I said, ACF was born out of the need to help to ensure that private sector are contributing towards Africa's development. What does that mean? So we're all familiar with the fact that government cannot do it alone, right? And the greatest employer of labor is the private sector. So we were born out of a mission to help private sector build resilience for the most vulnerable in African communities. And we see the most vulnerable being women as well as the young. Our two focus areas since our establishment in 2008 has been agriculture as well as clean energy projects. We've dabbled in other projects that fall in the intersection of the two, but those are our two key pillars. We've been able to raise just shy of $500 million of funding, and we've been able to deploy that across sub-Saharan Africa. We have an operational experience of being able to leverage about 3.6 dollars for every for every capital that we provide as seed for our investees. Beyond that, we've supported more than 576 enterprises, and we've impacted over 36 million lives. And we've been able to create more than 3,500 direct jobs, leading to a net development impact of over $2 billion. So it shows you that we have a lot of experience working with private sector to yield the desired outputs that we want. And in this particular case, that's for the energy transition plan. Next slide, please. So who are we as AECF? And this is one of my favorite quotes. We unlock the power of the private sector to positively impact the lives of rural and marginalized communities in Africa. And how do we do this? We have a innovative high impact. We look for innovative high impact businesses focused on energy and agriculture. We believe these private sector companies are the engine for transforming economic impacts and delivering the impact that we want to see across the continent. We have over two decades of experience doing. We have close to 2 decades of experience doing this, and we're currently the largest and longest running challenge fund on the continent. And I said we've been operating since 2008. Our areas of specialty is we don't just provide capital to companies, we also provide them with advisory support, because we realize that a lot of companies on the continent tend to have sometimes governance issues. So we support them with building strong governance structures so that way they can attract commercial financing. We also help them with knowledge services, so building of a business plan, building a financial model, and we also support them with investment support to help them catalyze more financing from the financing that we're able to provide them. So those are the 4 key areas of support that we provide to companies for them to be able to scale. Next slide, please. So AECF in Nigeria, as I mentioned earlier, this is not our foray into the market. We've done a few projects over the years. We've been able to support over 19 companies. We've been able to invest over $8.5 million in Nigeria, and we've impacted over 600 lives. These are a quick snapshot of the companies that we've supported in the past. In the power sector, we ran a program that closed in 2023 that supported consistent energy, smarter grid, and so say. We've had more work being done in Kano State in a program that's called IIW that's targeted at setting up women cooperatives and providing them with the requisite inputs for them to be able to yield decent returns and giving them market linkages. Next slide, please. So ETCF, which is why we're all here. So thanks again for your patience. It takes to stand this long. Ooh, I can see almost up to 300. Good turnout. So yeah, ETCF. So ETCF is, as I said, the Energy Transition Challenge Fund. It's a 20 million euro facility that was provided by the German government through KfW and is being implemented by AECF. Our anchor ministry in Nigeria is the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. And we've also set up a governance structure called the Project Steering Committee that is made up of relevant local stakeholders to ensure that the program is aligned to Nigeria's climate goals. Some of the stakeholders include NCCC, as well as Rural Electrification Agency, the Ministry of Power, the German Embassy as the local representatives for the German government, as well as KfW, who is who is providing us the funding. The program is meant to last for 4 years, so we're about halfway through our first year now. We're planning to impact over 1 million lives and support at least 20 innovative companies to help them scale. The funding size is 50 million euros, and we're hoping to administer this fund across three broad investment windows. Window 1 is targeted at reducing the energy access deficit that we have in the country, because Nigeria has one of the largest energy access deficits globally. And the way we are looking to approach this is similar to all our other windows, to be market following. So we don't want to be over prescriptive on the set of technologies that we want to see. We want the market to tell us what they've seen that works. And as long as it meets our investment principles, we'll support those businesses. In window 1, we're not just supporting energy access, but also supporting clean cooking solutions, solar home systems, microgrids, mini grids, and any other technology that helps bridge the energy access gap. We're also in window 1 supporting manufacturing of some of these equipment, as long as you can show us a clear route to market for those products to yield the impact that we want to see on that particular window. Window 2 is targeted at energy for productive use. Energy for productive use, that includes for large C&I customers, so the types of Nigerian breweries that have a few megawatts of demand, all the way down to your small rural farmer that either needs agro-processing equipment or irrigation, as well as agro-processing zones as well. Window 3, which we will not be talking about in this particular webinar, but we'll be hopefully launching this particular window towards Q2 next year. So please keep an eye out, especially if you carry out TVET, which stands for Technical and Vocational Educational Training. So that particular window is to help build an ecosystem of competent individuals that can support companies both in window 1 as well as window 2. So yeah, thank you very much again for your time. And I would hand over to David, who will give you a greater insight into what the ETCF is, how you can apply, and some of the frequently asked questions that we tend to receive. Thank you. Thanks again for making out the time.
So much, Saad, for that high-level introduction into who we are as AECF and also what the ETCF program hopes to achieve. Just moving on very quickly into some additional insights on what we tend to offer for companies who would come through the program. We're going to be providing non-refundable grants, milestone and result-based financing between 100,000 euros to 800,000 euros per company. Tailored technical assistance would provide support to business development and scaling renewable energy solutions, specifically as we go through the different process of developing your project and also onboarding, and we identify that there are specific gaps that can be filled with technical assistance. The program seeks to bridge that gap, because for us, it's not just financing a project, but we want companies to be able to scale, close follow-on capital and follow-on investments to scale their enterprises. So our hope is that you come in contact with this program and 5 years after, you're already closing Series A or even possibly Series B, but the hope is to really strengthen companies to be formidable forces within the sector. Also, investment advisory support. We will be providing facilitation to additional financing and partnerships through a very large network, just as mentioned by Saad. We have, as an organization, AECF has facilitated over $500 million, I beg your pardon, in investment through companies across 26 countries that we play in as of today. Also, we promote innovation and encourage the development of cutting-edge renewable energy solutions. And our process, transparent and accountable process, milestone-based grants ensure that projects remain impactful and sustainable. One key thing for us as well is to be able that for those who come through or who come into the program, we're going to teach you, onboard you on the relevant compliance processes and accounting processes that we want you to have, because we also want that you are able to report effectively and properly. As finally, we would also drive social economic impact and lower energy costs. We want to see jobs created. We also want to see that your projects lead to significant reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So our impact areas, very quickly up the top of our head, we're looking at expanding access to enable at least 1 million lives, gain new and improve access to modern and clean energy supplies. We're looking at scaling renewable energy solutions, a minimum deployment of at least 6 megawatts, reduce gas emissions, increase employment opportunities that would help create at least 1,400 direct jobs and minimum 1,000 indirect jobs. Also, just like it was earlier mentioned, we have a third window that focuses on TVETs. And so to train young people, we have a focus on women and a strong focus on women and youth. But generally, we want to be able to see that people are trained with relevant competencies that contribute towards the solar value chain or improving the solar value chain in the country. And so we have pegged that at 650 people to be trained, and we hope to actually exceed that number. We're just saying that conservatively. Also, we intend to mobilize private investment and strengthen local enterprises. We'll typically have a minimum requirement of matching 1-for-1, and I usually like to say 1-to-3. So for every euro we give you, we want to be able to unlock at least an additional euro. And so we hope that we're able to raise $26 million euros in private capital to support Nigeria's energy transition, and also help invest in a minimum of 20 companies. Yeah. Thank you. Next slide. Very quickly, our projects and that we would finance would revolve around these 5 key pillars, which we call our investment thesis. Your projects have to be high impact projects. These are projects that must illustrate that can create high social impact on key impact metrics. We also want to be able to see that there's significant additionality. So funded projects is to create social economic benefits that would not be attained, but also we want to see that through your projects, we're able to unlock more meaningful financing. Also, commercial viability. We would not fund projects that are not commercially viable. From the get-go, we must prove bankability, commercial viability. Also, innovation. All our funded projects have to show that innovation must be demand-driven and harness private sector initiative and implementation capacity. And we also don't want our projects to create a distortion. So we want to see that bullish systemic change, where these projects that we are financing must illustrate impact beyond even the project life cycle, the immediate project life cycle, and also create other sorts of impact that would translate into improved lives and livelihoods in the lives of those who would be impacted by the projects, and much more. Going into much more detail now for window 1 and window 2. I know some people already having questions. We've been receiving a lot of questions via the ETCF email address, which is official email address, which is etcf-nigeria@acfafrica.org. One thing I would mention here, you cannot apply for more than one window because we either fund you in Windows 1 or Windows 2 and also subsequently Windows 3. But talking about more details about the term sheet for Windows 1. For Windows 1, which is the milestone-based and result financing approach, as adopting that, we're going to support early stage activities, market awareness, inventory, working capital, and all of that, especially for projects that we have specific requirements, but for projects like fall into that category, you can access up to 30% initial payment to implement this project, and the subsequent payments will come much after. So here we also are mentioning the types like projects around incentive cap, such as for SHS, maximum 30% of retail price, mini grids up to 600 euros per connection. And also, very importantly, it's important to mention that we have a holdback which should usually be paid after the project has been implemented, because we also want to be able to see that you're not just implementing a project that and just extract up the resources, but we want you to be able to ensure that you believe in this project. That means it should be able to stand the test of time. And after a couple of years, which will be defined by the independent contracts, then you're paid the holdback. And this is usually after relevant impact matrices have been gotten. When it comes to matching contribution, yes, we have already mentioned that for every grant we provide to you, for every euro, we're expecting you to also provide an additional investment. And these have been disaggregated into 20% in kind and 80% in cash. Matching contributions can include venture capital, it could include debt, it could include equity financing, and in kind, it could be use of goods, services, and facilities as well. Just to recap, for the matching fund requirement, the current ratio based on our time for Windows 1 is 1-to-1. We're going to be able to provide between 100 and 800,000 euros, and you would have at least 36 months to implement your project. Of course, that would be the timeline. You could execute your project in 12 months or in 18 months. You are literally going to be in our best books if you choose to do that. For Window 2, very quickly, Window 2 has a similar approach. Here for projects covering up to 40% capex per system, capped at the approved grant amount for each system size. For systems up to 1 megawatt, in case you want to do possibly a microgrid that is up to 1 megawatt, 40% subsidy applies. As a system above 1 megawatt, the grant is capped at 250,000 euros per system. But again, just to mention that a company can access a maximum of 800,000 euros for their portfolio of projects. Yes. And also, it is also important that we know that for the matching contributions as well, same thing applies, 80% in follow-on investments. It could be venture capital, it could be equity, it could be debt, and 20% in kind, which include use of goods, services, and facilities. And also, just to mention, right, the only difference for this particular window is that projects within this window would be implemented within 12 to 24 months, as against Window 1, where we had the opportunity of 36 months. In Windows 2, we're looking at a maximum of 12 months. Matching fund requirements remain 1-to-1, and other things remain as displayed. Very quickly, our ETCF eligibility criteria. Who can apply? These are companies registered in Nigeria, registered companies who have at least 2 years audited financial accounts, ability to match contributions, that are active within the renewable energy market and space. It could be also companies that are doing manufacturing as well. We are very open to that. And also maybe you're doing decentralized solutions or distribution of systems, SHS, we're open to that. It could be a mini-grid developer, we're open to that. These Windows 1 and 2, are specific to private for-profit companies. And it's important that we know this. So NGOs or companies that are not for profit cannot apply. And also, you must also ensure that you observe relevant compliance with Nigerian solar standards and KFW environment and social guidelines. We have, in the course of today's presentation, we have a detailed session that speak to our ESG requirements, which are very robust as identified by our donors, KFW, and also other partners like the IFC, which much more details will be provided in the course of today's session. What do we fund? Very quickly, solar home system project, productive use of energy assets and also projects, solar-powered micro and mini-grids, clean cooking solutions, standalone solar solutions, large solar systems for commercial and industrial use. Very quickly, what's the competition process? We launched the competition officially on November 7th, and it would run till January 2nd, 2026. So we're currently receiving applications, and hence why we are having this sort of webinar to engage with stakeholders in the industry, provide questions for those who have already commenced the application process and want to ask 1 or 2 questions, want to understand the process a bit more. That's why we are having this webinar. And this is one of the series of webinars that we have planned up to the point where the application closes, that we will be having with you industry players. So very quickly, it starts on the application. The application process starts with where you submit a brief through the ETCF submittables. In a few minutes, our colleagues will run you through an experiential presentation on how that system or platform works. So when you send in that application, it's been reviewed, scored by an independent committee. And after the scoring is done, shortlisted companies now emerge. They have gone through the different evaluations, seen that the projects, of course, abide by the thesis and the projects that are exciting that the team wants to go with, that meet all the relevant requirements. So they are shortlisted, and those that are shortlisted are invited to submit a comprehensive proposal and business plan. So at the point, companies that do not scale to that point will be properly informed on the status of the application. Once you get to that point of being invited to submit your comprehensive business proposal and plan, there'll be further deep dive, and of course, due diligence would commence, and other relevant activities, programmatic activities will commence to help us understand the companies better, get to visit you more, and get to understand where you work from, what the project site is, and all of those necessary information. Then proposals are rigorously assessed based on their alignment with ETCF's objectives by the Internal Investment Review Committee, and successful applicants would now be notified after this. And once you are notified of the success, then relevant activities also covering contracting would commence. And once we have gone through all of that, before contracting happens, there will be a clear agreement between what the milestones are, what the KPIs are, what the reporting obligations are, and all of that would be done. Then disbursements would literally follow. And of course, between the contracting and disbursement, there will be several onboarding processes, because the donors have specific requirements. We also have specific requirements that those who are successful must meet. So in terms of ESG requirements, in terms of impact reporting, mode of reporting, and all of those sort of onboarding would be done for those who get through that point. And again, like we mentioned in the course of our presentation, that there will be tailored technical assistance. And by this time, the relevant tailored technical assistance that we've identified that is important that is useful for the companies, and also mutually agreed by these companies, will now commence. Because for us, it commences right from the beginning of the project up to the point of completion, and even post-completion of the project. So allow me at this time to invite my colleague to take it on, to give us a much more hands-on experience on how the application process is. Our assumption is that some people on this call may not have even started the application. So this will just give you a bit more insight into it. So Caleb, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, David. Thank you so much for that introduction. I think you've given us an idea of what to expect in the workflow and the process. So yeah, so my name is Caleb Kirui. I'm dealing with the system that is Submittables that will be used in this application process. So what we'll do is that I'll give you two representations of how this will happen. The first one is a conceptual breakdown of the process, and then now the graphical representation, which is the end user's perspective. So starting in the process, so the first thing that you do is you create an account in Submittables. So I don't know if you've been told, but if you don't have an account, it will be impossible to apply for this. So you first need to create an account, and then from there you will be ushered to the eligibility questions, whereby you will be asked a few questions about your company. And then if you pass that process, then you have the opportunity to give your company information, whereby this will be held in the concept note questionnaire, whereby you will be asked various questions such as your company information, business and financial information, market track record and impact of your company in the previous financial years, and then also things like regulatory compliances. And then from there, you then have to wait for response from the independent review committee after the marking. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so thank you. So this is now the graphical representation of exactly what you will find when you start the process. So I know that people will get this link from different places. So it's such as LinkedIn. Others will go through our company website. So when you, this is the first picture on your top left is a company's website where we've placed the application. When you click there, you can see a place called there's somewhere with apply here. So this will take you to the two competitions, and then from there, you depending on the window that you're applying for, and then you can now choose which one, and then you can press. First of all, you can see the guidelines and read the overview of the program and try to understand what it entails, and then you can now go to submit. And then when you click submit, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so you'll be ushered to the submittables interface. So as you can see on your left, it's asking for the email address. So if you have an account, you can log in directly. If you don't, you'll be required to create an account. So when you press continue, you'll now be ushered to the questions on eligibility, where we'll be asking a few questions, about 10 to 20 questions just about your company information. And from there, if you qualify and you press next, you'll go to the main questionnaire now, where we are asking all this information about the company information, about the business and financial information, your track record in the past few years, your regulatory compliances, and then that is in the main questionnaire now. Of all this process, the main part that will take a lot of time will be on the main questionnaire. So these other bits will not be so much. And then once you are finished, you press submit, and then now this will be taken to our independent review committee. They'll review the applications, and the successful applicants will be notified and be told what are the next steps in the process. Yes, so thank you so much. Let me welcome David, so that he can talk about the frequently asked questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caleb, for that hands-on experience on how applicants can make their application. Again, like we mentioned, the applications are open from now till January 2nd, 2026. Just going on very quickly, I see that there are quite a number of questions already on the chat. Thank you so much for asking them. That's why we put this session together, to receive these questions and also respond to them as quickly and as in more detail as possible. Also, there have been questions around the slides. The slides will not be shared. However, this meeting is being recorded. And so our media team, after this session, would put it together and also ensure that it's live or published on our media platform. So we would also, for everyone who registered for this webinar, once that is ready, we would also share that via email with you, so that you have access to all that have been shared. We also understand that some people joined a little bit after we had started the session. It's okay. You would get this recording, and so you have nothing to worry about. For the frequently asked questions, can an applicant apply for more than one window? We had already addressed this in the course of the session. No, each applicant can apply for only one window. Applicants must select the window that best aligns with their business model and proposed activities. Also, it's good to mention here that we have on the site, which would also drop on the chat, and also we've sent via email, which we would also still do. We have a section called frequently asked questions, which we are updating weekly. So currently, if you go on our site, you see that the questions are there, and those questions are informed based on the kind of questions we receive both via email and also on platforms like this, and we can keep on updating them periodically to ensure that you have all the answers you need, because there's a likelihood that as you're thinking about a question or the question you may have already been asked, and so that would help you further strengthen the quality of your applications. Next question, what are the matching fund requirements? Applicants must provide a one-to-one matching fund to AECF's contribution. At least 80% of matching fund must be in cash and in kind, capped at 20%. How long is the funding duration? Programs can run for up to 36 months for window 1, like we earlier mentioned when we were going through the session on timesheets, while for window 2, which is the commercial and industrial window, can run for up to 24 months. Next, still speaking around the frequently asked questions, what types of projects are eligible for ETCF support? The ETCF supports innovative and commercially viable clean energy projects, clean energy and energy efficiency projects, including renewable energy generation, clean cooking technologies, energy storage, and productive use of energy systems that improve lives and livelihoods and climate outcomes. What are the ticket sizes? Each applicant can receive between 100,000 to 800,000 euros per company. Depend on project scope, business maturity, and potential impact. Keyword on scope, project scope, business maturity, and potential impact. What are the 3 funding windows? We have Windows 1 and 2 at the moment, with the first window is Household Energy Access, supports clean and off-grid energy for homes and small businesses. While we have the CNI window, which is window 2, which finances renewable energy and energy efficiency projects for industries and enterprises. The third window, like it was earlier mentioned, would go live by Q2 next year. And this window focuses much more on TVETs and also public institutions. Much more details will be provided in due course. Some additional questions. What is ETCF Transition Challenge Fund? The Nigeria Energy Transition Challenge Fund, ETCF. It's a 4-year program funded by Germany's Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, through the German Development Bank, KfW, which is implemented by Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, and it aims to catalyze private investment in clean energy efficient solutions across Nigeria. What are the main goals of ETCF? It is to increase access to modern, affordable, and sustainable energy, promote investments in renewable energy and energy efficient solutions, and support public institutions and skills development through technical and vocational education and training. Who is eligible to apply? Legally registered companies, SMEs, and in some cases, partnerships involving NGOs, cooperatives, or social enterprises with clean energy solutions in Nigeria. Can startups apply? Yes, that's a resounding yes, provided they are legally registered, operational for 2 years, demonstrate capacity to co-invest, and present a commercially viable business model. Application process. What is the completion process? This process includes call for proposals. We've talked about this, concept note submission, business plan development for shortlisted applicants, and final selection and contracting. How will proposals be evaluated? Based on our investment thesis: innovation, commercial viability, scalability, social and environmental impact, inclusion especially of women and youth, and alignment with Nigeria's energy transition plan. Under technical assistance, what kind of non-financial support will ETCF provide? Technical assistance includes business development support, environmental and social compliance training, community engagement, financial management, and monitoring and evaluation capacity building. Who provides the TA? Very important question. TA is provided by AECF and its partners. This would include local advisory and local and international advisory firms. Under implementation and compliance, what environmental and social standards apply? ETCF applies AECF's environmental and social management system and international frameworks such as IFC's performance standards, KfW sustainability guidelines, World Bank environmental and social framework, and Nigerian environmental and social laws. What's our geographical scope? It is limited. Is it limited to specific regions in the country? No. It is a nationwide program, but it prioritizes rural and peri-urban areas where energy access gaps are greatest. What are the reporting expectations for beneficiaries? Beneficiaries must report quarterly on project progress, A&S compliance, and impact indicators such as jobs created, CO2 emissions reduced, beneficiaries reached. Very important question on grievance and how can participants raise complaints or concerns. ETCF operates a grievance redress mechanism, GRM, at both the fund and project levels. That's with the investees. Complaints can be submitted via email, our phone numbers on our website, and through ETCF's Nigeria office. I'll now get to our email address very quickly or very soon. What outcomes are expected from the program? ETCF aims to expand access to clean energy, strengthen resilience, create jobs, enhance productivity, and contribute to Nigeria's net zero emission goals. How can interested organizations apply or get much more information? At the moment, we have all the information to apply on our website, which is on www.acfafrica.org. And you can also write to us with any of your inquiries at etcf-nigeria@acfafrica.org. I see that the chat box has been buzzing with a number of questions. We have team members and colleagues who are actively working to respond to these questions. And so, but just to take a few of these questions that maybe, because I'm sure in the course of the frequently asked questions, we've been able to answer some of them. I see questions around, can we provide more info on category 3? We would send out much more details in due time. As far as you registered for this webinar, we would send information on that. And we want to encourage you for as many questions that we don't get to in the course of this webinar. Note that we would provide answers to them and update them on our frequently asked questions. And so it's important to note that I see that there are much more project-specific questions. Oh, do we finance e-mobility? Very quickly, no, we don't finance e-mobility in these current windows that are open, including window 3. However, there are plans in the future to capture that. And just to also re-emphasize that these current windows 1 and 2 help to bridge specifically the energy access gap to those and to improve life and livelihoods to those who are currently experiencing energy poverty or experiencing reduced levels of energy access. I think on that, we've largely answered some of the questions that we see. We would definitely get to you in our responses, but right now, without further ado, I would like us to go straight into the next section that focuses on the ESG requirements of the Energy Transition Challenge Fund. And allow me to welcome our next presenter, my colleague, Mr. Aziz Ogudero, as he takes it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. Good morning once again, everyone. It's nice to see everyone here. Very quickly, I'll be moving on to discuss the ESG expectations and requirements of the Energy Transition Challenge Fund. We know that fundamentally, the energy transition is not without the inherent environmental and social risk. And what that means is that our planning, the process of conceiving this project, has to consider the environmental and social risk and come up with appropriate mitigation measures to actually mitigate them. So on that note, I'll give an overview of the sustainability and ESG. I'm sure if I were to ask a lot of the participants here that what does sustainability mean to them, we are likely going to get different responses from conservation, environmental protection, resource efficiency, equity. And those are all correct because the sustainability conversation started from looking at the economic development and realizing that the rate of using the environmental resources is not sustainable. It's environmentally destructive, and that led to the Broland conference, which led to this concept of sustainable development. And the concept of sustainable development look at how do we meet the need of the present generation, that is intra-generational equity, and also the need of the future generation. So that is intergenerational equity. So by the time you look at those concepts, realize that fundamentally sustainability is looking at long-term thinking, equity, and how do we ensure that the world benefit everybody. So you look at the concept of the 3 Ps, the people, planet, and profit. So those are the 3 dimensions of sustainability. And as you are considering this project, these are something that we want you to look at. So it's not just commercially viability, it's how is the project environmentally sustainable and socially responsible. So a subset of sustainability that is also quite very much in different conversation is ESG. So here the term, what is ESG? What does it mean? And why are we talking about ESG? So ESG is a subset of sustainability, and it's something that came about in the financial conversation. So it's a conversation about, so yes, we want to drive all these developments. And yes, we know that they have to make profits, but how do we ensure that at the point of origination of this project or this transaction or this development, you want to make sure that they are conceived with looking at the environmental and social aspect of those projects. So the ESG talks about environmental, social, and governance. That is what the acronym is. And there are simply set of factors that investors want to look at while they're assessing your project. So it's not about just how does it make money. It's also about, is it environmentally sustainable? Is it socially responsible? How does these different factors, how do they create risk, impact, and opportunity? So as we are assessing the project, we're also looking at what are the risks in this project, what are the opportunities, and what are the impacts going to be. So if you look at environment, it talks about how you are environmentally being an environmental steward. So you look at how your projects or your proposed activity is going to impact the environmental media, talks of the air, the water, the soil, and other environmental resources, and how that interaction could lead to a negative impact or even an adverse impact. Social, we talk about people. So the just transition has to think about the people. There is no sustainability without looking at the fundamentals, which are the people, the stakeholders, which should also get value from this. So it's not about the shareholders that just get the value, but all the other stakeholders as well. And governance, at the top of it is governance, because it talks about the corporate leadership, the management, internal control that ensures that all these measures, all these safeguards that we are talking about are actually being implemented and people get to get the benefit and the environment is not negatively impacted. So moving on, just a bit more information on ESG. Like I said, there are different factors, and those different factors are applicable to different projects, different sectors, or different transactions. So the core there is to identify which factors are actually material to what activities you want to do and look at how you can actually mitigate that. So it's a principle of materiality. It's about identifying the most important risks that we need to mitigate. Looking at some of these factors that we have put here, we know that in distributed renewable energy systems, so if an energy transition project, there are also inherent environmental, social, and governance risk. Some of them have been listed there, but they're not just risk, right? They're also opportunities. So it depends on the lens you are looking at it and how well you're able to mitigate this risk. Then that leads to the opportunity. So for environment, we know that greenhouse gas emission, this is primarily one of the objectives of this project. So in this case, it's not a risk, right? It's an opportunity. We want to reduce emission, we want to avoid emission. Then pollution issues in different contexts could also occur. So we talk of solar hybrid systems and waste management. That is on top of everybody's mind, because the question we need to ask ourselves is this, that in 15 years' time, we have provided energy access to this community. By that 15 years, the end of life of some of these solar assets will be near. So the question is, what happens to them? Where do we put them? Where do we dispose them? And how would that disposal or how would that management actually constitute an environmental and social risk to the people? So that's a question that we need to answer as we are proposing this project. So for social, Very important is human rights issues. How does this project affect human rights of people, the community, and the affected personally at different categories? So also look at occupational health and safety. That is very, very fundamental. Nobody should have to work and have to think about whether you are going to get home or not. And we know that for whatever solution we are proposing, there are actually health and safety risks. The scale might be different, the nature might be different, but those risks are actually existing. So you talk of the issue of land acquisition. Land acquisition is a big issue, and for big projects that require a lot of land, this is an area that you have to be very critical when addressing it to ensure that you don't lead to constitute either displacement physically or economically. So let's go to governance. We talked about the board governance, like I mentioned, the risk management, and also issues of business ethics. So ethics is at the core of the governance. What are we doing that is ethical? Are those business being conceived ethically? So we have moved on from the algorithm that the business of business is profit. So, but that business has to be done in a way that is both socially and legally responsible. So moving on, we want to ask ourselves this question. So what does ESG mean to us at the Energy Transition Challenge Fund? And I'm sure it's a question that everybody is looking to get the response to. So how do we look at ESG? What exactly does it mean to us? So like we said, we are driving the energy transition, but fundamentally we are driving it in a way to ensure that the negative externalities that could arise from this project that we want to finance is minimized to a very reasonable extent. So we look at this from the lens of risk management. So through the fact that we have an environmental and social policy, we also have a very robust environmental and social management systems. We ensure that this investment process or this contracting process is going to go through the environmental and social risk management framework that allow us to identify those risks from environment and social and governance issues and ensure that our investors are able to implement safeguard mitigation measures to ensure that those risks does not crystallize or materialize and becomes a concern for us. So we also look at it from the lens of value creation, right? So we are all here because these sectors, the renewable energy sector, the clean energy sectors they are climate aligned sectors, right? They are one of the critical sectors that we can use to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So climate mitigation in the real sense. So there are opportunities there, and we are well posed to actually capture those opportunities as well as maximize them. So for reputation, so we work with donors, right? And development finance partners and a whole lot of other stakeholders. So we want to ensure that the investment activities we are undertaking is not going to constitute an issues either for the donor or for ourselves, by ensuring that they are well implemented, they are well conceived, and they are well implemented to ensure that we are not getting grievances from different stakeholders. So it means that our reputational capital is very important to us. It's not just about we are financed to, we want to ensure that your activities is being done in a way that is environmentally sustainable and socially responsible. And the next one there is sustainable development. So we already defined the concept of sustainable development. So I will just emphasize that for this project, we are looking at impact on SDG 7, which is clean and affordable energy. SDG 8, we want to create jobs, decent work and economic growth. And we are also looking at SDG 13 on climate goals, climate action. These are essentially climate action we are taking. And of course, we are also aligned with the SDG 5 on gender equality. So those are some of our priority sectors that I've mentioned there, and it will be good to emphasize this as you are considering your project, that this is how your project contributes to the sustainable development. So innovation has been said in different conversation here. So it's part of our investment thesis, and it's a way for you, it's a mindset, right? It's how you conceive that project to ensure that you are being innovative, you are looking at new ways of doing things, you are looking at new ways of executing things, and you are looking at new ways to actually bring about that energy access in a way that actually benefit the people and also the planet. So that is very important. So moving on, so we want to do a bit more dive into the risk and opportunity. So I already mentioned that ESG could be viewed from the lens of risk management. And when you look at the concept of risk, the International Organization for Standardization described risk as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So that element, uncertainty, means that something that it's not certain. So it's an element of probability. So that's one way of That's an aspect of risk, the probability. The other aspect is the severity or the consequence. So it means that risk has those two elements. It's inherently uncertain. So it's not as if it is going to happen. But when it happens, it creates an impact, and that is where the concerns are. So, but the idea is for you to manage risk so that it does not crystallize to an impact, or if you manage it well enough, it reduces the impact. So looking at it from that two lens, you also realize that by the time you manage that risk properly, you could actually lead to an opportunity. So we talk of positive risk, negative risk. So let's look at some of these different models that we are looking at and some of the environmental, social, and governance risks that are inherent in them. So I will just run through a view. I'm sure we can conceive more as we are proposing our project. So for solar owned systems, so fundamentally for every DRE project or DRE model, so the concerns on waste management and electronic waste is quite serious, because we know that they have the end of life and something has to happen to them. So we have to have a mitigation measures to address that. So that's a risk. So if it's not mined properly, then it becomes an impact, and that impact might be pollution, land pollution to the environment, and even maybe contamination of the water source. So that is very critical. So you look at social risk from community engagement or customer engagement, depending on the model. You also look at some health and safety risks that might be involved in the solution. Of course, they might be low because of the nature, but they are also there. And it's also good to know that the risk management is commensurate to those risks. So you talk of governance, you talk of data issues, and of course, the quality in the supply chain. So for mini grids, we know that mini grid typically requires that you have some form of land to be able to put those solar assets, right? So that process of acquiring that land is quite critical to ensure that we are not displacing critical habitat. I'm sure we know that once this habitats or biodiversity has been affected, and the project becomes inherently higher risk. So you also have some noise and emission from backup system that is used for solar hybrid systems. So I already mentioned how serious land issue could be, which means that the process of acquisition has to get the required consent. So FPIC, free, prior, and informed consent, that is very critical. And of course, health and safety issues. So governance is also important, because mini grid is typically resident in the community. So it means that you are more or less at the mercy of the community. So you have to engage them properly to ensure that your project has the sustainable outcome. So for productive use of energy, typically this could be for agro equipment or maybe code value chain, right? So you also use a lot of resources from water and others. So you also have occupational health and safety risk in machineries and other issue. And clean cooking talks of the biomass sourcing from different model that you're using. There could be emission if that technology is not meeting the required quality standard and all of that. So those are some of the risks there. So the question is, how do we manage risk? And that takes me to the next slide. So that takes me to the next slide, which it talks about how do we manage risk. So we already defined what risks are, and managing them has led to a lot of frameworks. So some of them is the ISO framework. You also have the COSO framework, but the framework we are looking at there is the framework from the International Finance Corporation, which is the environmental and social management system. So when we say the environmental and social management system, right? So we are looking at a management system is simply what? A set of policy, framework, plans, and actions that allow you to mitigate what? A particular risk. And that risk means that there is a way you are managing it consistently. The key word there is consistent. So it's not about, so we say this risk today, we manage it like this, tomorrow we apply different measure, or we are not even able to identify this risk because we have not followed a particular set of process. So there has to be a divine way those activities are being done, those measures are being taken to ensure that there is a consistent approach that you are using to mitigate those risks. And fundamentally, most management systems start from policy, because that is the higher level statement of commitment for your management that, okay, this is how we are doing business. For our solar mining projects or DRE projects, we want to ensure that we do it in a way that is environmentally sustainable, socially responsible. We want to ensure we mitigate health and safety risks. We want to ensure that the environment is not negatively affected, the community are well taken care of. So those high-level statements, those are your words, their policy. And once you have that policy in place, the next thing you want to ask yourself is, what are the risks and impact that could arise from this project? And they could be different depending on the context, depending on the community, and depending on the nature and scale of those projects. But you want to make sure you have an approach to actually identify this risk. So some of these might be through the proper legal requirement. This could be environmental and social impact assessments or environmental and social management plan, as the case may be. But once you identify this risk, the next thing we ask ourselves is, how do you manage it? So you manage that through the management programs. So the management program is a set of plans, activities that you do. So for example, if I were to identify that occupational health and safety risk, a major risk for my project, maybe because I'm doing a C&I project that is in a very high-rise building, then I must be able to identify that, okay, that means this high-rise building that is working at height is very critical. So how do I manage that risk? So, do I need to have a work at height procedure? Do I need to have some equipment that will help me to get this solar access to the roof? Or do I need to get some specialists that can actually undertake this project? Those are your set of management programs. And that means you're also considering the training, the required resources that will go into implementing that particular activities in a way that is safe for everybody. So, and that takes me to the next one there, which is the capacity. So the capacity, the organizational capacity and competency, which talks about, yes, you have identified risk, you have management program, but who is driving it exactly? Who is actually in charge? Is there an organizational structure that allows that someone is being taken seriously when they're having this conversation? Because what you typically see is a lot of policies and procedure, but nobody is driving it. There is no ownership, there is no commitment, and that means that simply there is no system because nothing is getting implemented. So you want to ensure that you have that systems in place. And next one there is, yes, we could have a lot of systems in place, but there is still residual risk, right? And things can go wrong. So you need to plan for that. So whether it is having fire control measures, whether it's having first aid equipment, or just those basic measures depending on your project, that ensures that even if something goes wrong, there is a way to respond. That is very, very fundamental, because we have to bear in mind that these projects are taking place in a particular residential area. It means that there could be interaction between the people there and also those equipment. So it means that there is a risk and you have to plan for that as well. So let's go on to stakeholder engagement. I like to say that stakeholder engagement is very, very paramount in distributed energy system. There is just no way you want to go about it that you're not going to engage your critical stakeholders, because they could be the ones critical factor determining whether your project is sustainable or not. So the stakeholder engagement has to be done properly, from identifying them, from getting their interest, and also making sure that you provide adequate information that allows them to make informed decision. So from there, you also have a measures to communicate external to your stakeholders. And grievance. So grievance was already mentioned. You must have a system that allows you to receive grievance, acknowledge them, investigate them, and provide the appropriate mitigation measures. Because if you don't, it means that you're allowing those issues to become bigger issue because you are not addressing them on time. And ongoing reporting. So reporting, whatever you are doing has to be documented, because as part of the ETCF, we expect that you report on how well you are implementing your management systems. And of course, we also participate in some monitoring. So it means that whether you are monitoring entirely on your own, we are also going to monitor where you are implementing this. So moving on to the next slide. So this talks about the ISA performance standard, which is 8. So the previous slide I discussed essentially looks at the elements, and that is what this performance standard one about. So the other thing I will just add is, so this as part of this PS1, you expect, if your project requires it to conduct environmental and social study, right? So this could be an environmental and social impact assessment, or ESMP, depending on the size of your project. So the PS2 talks about labor and working conditions. Like I said, the energy transition is not going to take place without human rights. So you have workers, you have community, you have different type of workers that are working with you. So it's important that they are treated fairly, the human rights, there is no discrimination, there is proper context, especially around occupational health and safety issues that is being implemented to ensure that they are not going to be negatively affected. So we are going to apply some of these requirements while looking at your project and ask ourselves, does your project going to trigger any of this, and how well have you proposed your mitigation measures? So So on PS3, we talk of resource efficiency and pollution prevention. Good enough distributed energy system means that you are reducing emissions. So you're not worrying about GHG here, you're more worrying about how well you are going to infiltrate them, that is being able to report on them. So these are basically the things you are looking at here. So, but of course, you are also still going to trigger this if you are using an hybrid system, but that impact might be minimal. So for community, so like we already said, mini grids are in the community. Some other solar systems might also be in a particular business setting or not. So it means there is still interaction. Those are your stakeholders. Those are your project affected personnel. So you must look at how that infrastructure is being conceived in a way that is inherently safe for them. So we are talking about electrical system. It means that the protection system must be very, very clear. So moving on to PS5, we talked about land acquisition and involuntary settlement. So you look at, you need a land, right? So how do you acquire those land? So that's the question. So you must acquire that land in a way that is fair. There is FPIC, there is free prior and income consent. If the community is providing that land, that is also clear. And if you're acquiring illegally, that is also very, very clear. But fundamentally, that land acquisition must not lead to physical or economic displacement, because that increases the risk of your projects, and that risk is not acceptable to us at the ETCF. So for PS6 talks about diversity, it means that if you are to acquire some land that require you to clear some high-level biodiversity, that is also something you have to put into consideration. Hopefully, we don't expect that you trigger this, because that also increases the risk of your project. For indigenous people, whether they are designated as something, but we expect that your community people, whether indigenous or not, are aware, consulted, informed around the different projects that you are going to propose to us, so that you ensure that these are not triggered and you also don't increase the risk of your project. And lastly, on cultural heritage, so there might be some cultural heritage, whether tangible or not, that might be in the community. So it's good to do your community engagement assessment to understand if this is likely, and ensure that your land acquisition is not done on some of these areas. So we already discussed the IFC PS 1 to 8, right? But I think this is important for us to understand how to build that system. So it's not just like, oh, we have a policy. Yes, we are going to ask if you have a policy, but we are also most fundamentally ask how well you are implementing them. So it's not about, oh, we have OHS policies, about, oh, so how many trainings have you done? Where is your risk assessment? What is the risk on this project? And how well have you been doing it? So both retrospectively, so that we can understand your organizational capacity and track record. So it means that your management system approach must consider how these are layers to ensure that there is documented evidence for your management plan, and as they are being done, they are also implementing them. So moving on to the next slide very quickly. So we ask ourselves, so I've already explained a bit, giving us background on how to apply some of these framework and standards to our project. But the question is, how are we going to look at it from us at the ETCF? So the very first one there is you are submitting a concept note. That is very, very clear. And at that concept note phase, you want to be sure that whatever activities you are proposing, whether the main activities or the associated activities around it, does not trigger the exclusion list. An exclusion list is something that we have from our donor and other DFIs that ensure that some activities are not funded because they are inherently very high risky in terms of the environmental and social impact. So any activities on this list are not going to be funded. This list is the link to this list has been put in our timesheets. I encourage you to review so that you ensure that your activities are not going to trigger this. So it means that for every concept note that we are reviewing, we are also reviewing with the mindset that these activities, some activities are not going to be funded if they're on this list. So we have to consider that. So moving on to the next level, which is the preliminary screening. So we are going to screen your projects, right, based on the information that you have provided and also our discussion with you to understand the ERNS categorization. So, and this ERNS categorization is based on the KFW ERNS categorization that has a 4-level categorization from category A, B, B+, B, and C. So the different categorization will inform how we are going to approach the project. So just for your information here, any project that is category A will not be funded because that is excluded by the donor. So like I said, the categorization will inform the due diligence, right? So it will inform the level of due diligence we are going to do working together with you to understand the risk, how well you have been complying with legal requirements, and that will lead to the development and the environmental and social action plan. So we are not saying you should have everything available. We are saying that if there are gaps, we are going to identify it together, and we are also going to work together to create the ESAP, and we are going to also work together to close it during the contracting and, of course, the implementation phase. And lastly, like we already said, we expect that you are going to report on us. So our impact, we are going to get that from the impact perspective, the environmental perspective. We expect that you are going to be reporting to us, and we are also going to be monitoring your progress as we go on in the project. So what are some of the expectations from the applicants? So during the application, I'm sure you have seen that there are some aspects that are asking you to list the environmental and social risk. We expect that you are able to clearly communicate that and articulate it, and also how you are going to mitigate that. So that is very, very critical. We also expect that if you make it to the next stage, which is the business planning stage, we expect that you support us to ensure that we identify all potential environmental and social risk in your project and provide us with adequate documentation for us to assess how well your organization has been performing in this regard. Like I mentioned, we are going to co-develop the ESAP, so that it's not that these are the requirements or these are the actions that I have to close on the ETCFs. No, we are going to identify those gaps together, and we are going to close it together, working together. And lastly, so those gaps that we are going to agree on is going to be part of your contracting, and it's going to be monitored throughout the life cycle of the project. So moving on to the ESG requirements. So this fundamentally speaks to the legal requirements. We know that we are a country that has environmental and social legislations, and they could be quite much. But we expect that all projects that needs proposed must meet these requirements. So some of them we mentioned here is the EIA and the ESMP, depending on the nature and the scale. So we know that your project, if you are proposing a mini grid that requires that, then you need to ensure that that is being done or is currently ongoing. So there are also some natural laws around energy, battery, and that battery means that it talks about how you are going to manage the end of life of the battery, the e-waste, and those ones are very, very important. So that could be you having a proper waste management plan or even an MOU with a recycling company that ensure that we know that the life cycle or the end of life of that battery or solar asset is going to be managed. So for social, this is very, very important. The social laws, they are very, very important because they are fundamentally aligned with human rights. So we expect that the laws exist. So one of them is the NSICA, which is about the Employee Compensation Act, that requires that companies contribute 1% of their payroll to ensure that to this National Social Insurance Trust Fund. So it means that if there are any injury, then they're able to get some funding from this pool to address that. So the other one there is the Pension Reform Act. So we expect that you are pension compliant. We also expect that you are meeting the national minimum wage. Except, so the caveat here is if you're exempted naturally by those laws, then that is fine. So we also expect that you comply with the NEC mini-grid regulations or other applicable regulations from NESA. Some of these have been detailed in the term sheets. We can also review them. For state laws, we know that we have state regulators there. For those that have state regulators in the project side they are proposing, we also expect that you understand those requirements and you are well in line to comply with them. So also we are leveraging on the HRE requirements to ensure that we are meeting some of these to ensure your project is aligned with that. And fundamentally, we have already explained our ENS requirements, ESMS from both the KFW that we expect that you comply with. So we also expect that you have a stakeholder engagement plan. This is very important. Like I already said, you have to be able to engage your stakeholder. It means there is a plan to it. There are ways that there is a methodology to your identification of them. There is your medication to your prioritization to your communication, and there is also a record that is being done. For grievance, we already mentioned that for ETCF, we are going to have a grievance redress mechanism. So you also have a role to play in this because you also must establish a grievance redress mechanism at your level, at the project level, or at company level, and that grievance redress mechanism can feed into our own grievance redress system. So we sort of have an oversight. It means that if there are issues from your project side or from your project, your stakeholders can reach out to us, and we are going to take that up to ensure that that grievance is appropriately resolved. So not to overflow this, we already mentioned that waste management. Yes, we also understand there are limitations based on technology available on this, but we are also going to work with you to ensure that the end of life of this is being managed. So moving on here, so yes, we have said a lot and it can look quite robust, right? Yes, we also understand that organization can be at different level of their implementation. That is fine. That is quite important that organizations are at different level in their environmental and social management system implementation. So based on the due diligence, we are going to be able to identify this, and we're happy to support to go to the next level in this. So you have seen the different stages here based on your system. So it means that yes, it might not come to us perfect. You might have some gaps. That is quite fine as long as they are not critical or legal requirement that we might have to close before the contracting. But beyond that, we are also happy to provide next technical assistance to ensure that we get to the level that is commensurate to your operational context, the nature and scale of your company or project. So moving on to grievance. So we already mentioned this, so I think this is just to give us some information on where you can send your grievance. So we understand that there might be some issues or challenges that you encounter during this project. You might also have some grievance. Yes, that is fine. We are happy for you to share them with us through our ETCF Nigeria, ETCF mail. You can also send to our legal mail from the AECF, and also can visit our fiscal office to share this with us. We are happy to receive, investigate, and provide the appropriate resolutions. So to conclude this conversation, right? So we have said quite a lot, right? How now we look at ESG, but essentially we want to ensure that as you are considering these projects, yes, we said they must be commercially viable, but they must also be environmentally sustainable and socially responsible. So if you look at the ESG from that lens, you realize that the idea is for you to reduce your liability. That means you are managing your health and safety very well so that you can reduce your risk. And of course, you consolidate your social license to operate. So beyond the legal license to operate, which you are requesting, you also want to make sure that your project is conceived in a way that you actually get that social license to operate, which is intangible, right? But it's the social acceptability of your project by your host community or your stakeholders. And by doing that, you're able to enhance your value and your reputation. You're able to access new market and grow because people trust in how well you deliver your project, your implementation, and of course, improve operational efficiency. But at the end of the day, they all converge to a particular point, right? Which is the fact that you want capital, you want to be able to uh, access assess markets and different opportunities. So that is part of the reason why we are here, and it's part of the reason why we're having this conversation. So we just pause here to take a look at the Q&A to see if we have some questions, then provide some response to that before I move on to the next. So I just saw a question here from Victor. At what stage of the application process are applicants required to provide the ESG reports or review their consideration? So just like I explained, so at the due diligence phase, we expect that you provide some documentation. They are not necessarily reports, they are just evidence of your implementation of the environmental and social management systems for us to assess to determine the level of maturity. Then after the contracting, that means you have become an investee. Means that you have reporting obligation to us on how well you're implementing your environmental and social management systems. But that is going to be defined by us. We are going to train you, we are going to support you to go through that stage. We are going to be with you at different steps. Okay, so if there are other questions, please let's endeavor to put them in the Q&A feature so that we can answer them live. or provide an appropriate response. So at this point, I'll hand over to my colleagues, Samson, to provide a high-level closing remark and overview of the discussion. Thank you very much.
Before Samson goes ahead, can I just quickly jump in? I've been furiously typing away in the chat box, providing feedback to a lot of the questions that are being asked. And we would do our best to provide answers in our FAQs on the website. We're hoping that every Wednesday we'll re-upload the FAQs to include new questions that we have. But generally speaking, a lot of the questions are quite similar in nature, asking about match contributions, asking about in-kind contributions, and also asking about the key project timelines. All of this information is on our website. I've already given a few of those answers to those questions in the answer tab as well. So please spend a few minutes just going through some of those answers that have been provided. A lot of the answers are actually in our term sheet. So I'll employ everybody to please go to our website to view those term sheets I mentioned, as well as the program briefs. You can simply Google ETCF Nigeria, and it will on Google and to take you straight to our website. Or you can even go as far as to add ETCF-AECF Nigeria, and similarly to take you right to the website where you find both term sheets and our program briefs. Aziz, thank you very much for that detailed presentation on some of our ESG requirements. I'm sure it's something that might be quite new to a lot of developers in this region, and if it's not new to you, it shows that you've already been doing the good work both for the environment, for the people, and for your customers as well. So please keep up the good work. And as they say, the expectation for good work is more work. So please don't be disincentivized to apply given all the requirements. We're just trying to set the record straight so that you know that it's not necessarily business as usual. And even though it's a grant, we'll be looking at your applications from a commercial perspective. So we're just priming you developers so that you approach this with the right frame of thinking to understand that yes, it's a grant, but this is a commercially but we're looking for commercially viable projects so that you can put your best foot forward. So thanks again, everyone, and I'll hand over to Samson.
Thank you, Sad, for providing this, again, part of the highlight of the entire webinar. And again, participant, we really appreciate the opportunity that you have and the time you have taken to be part of this webinar, where I'm happy that you have been able to learn about the ETCF, but more importantly about AECF. What we are all about. We've understood our investment thesis that deals with different areas that we want to see your project touch on in terms of impact, in terms of its commercial viability, in terms of innovation that we want to see, in terms of how we want to see you doing a new thing in the energy sector. Of course, we're also taking you through the ETCF as a project itself that covers what the project objectives are, the various windows that we have, and we also try to help you understand the application process, how you could apply, and of course, the processes for which we will be undertaking to review your own applications as they come in, and how the whole, how long it take us to get back to you, whether you're successful or you're not. And the other aspect of course, we also share with you organizations that are eligible to apply and what we will be funding as a program as well. And I'm sure that all this were very, you found this very useful to you, and I believe that it will help you to give us the best of application. And of course, thanks to Aziz too for taking us through the ESG. What are the requirements that you need to pass through based on those that related to ETCF in itself, building based on the ones that are provided by the donor and other international standard that you need to meet in your application. And please, as we have mentioned to you, feel free if you have any other questions you want us to respond to, feel free to drop them on the Q&A section. As Saad rightly mentioned here, I mean, we have tried as a team to provide responses to some of this Q&A on the Q&A tab. You can please open the Q&A tab and check the responses as Saad rightly mentioned. For other questions, just as you said, please always visit the keep tab on the FAQ section on the application platform. There, the responses would, I mean, some of those questions you raised here have been the answers have been provided there, but we will update them based on some of the new questions that are here that could probably have not been featured on the FAQs that are online. And so feel free to check the website for more details, responses to some of the questions that you might have, which could not have been responded to the way you think should be responded to. I think the last thing that I want to let you know is that you would have the recordings of the webinar. And so for those who registered for this webinar, you will be, our comms teams will share the webinar recordings with you. So please just keep tab and keep an eye on your email. You will surely get the recordings shared with you so that you can have even more details about the entire section and refer to it at any time you want any questions, you want to respond to anything that you need to just to go through it. Please feel free and play back the recordings. You have answers to some of your questions as we look forward to your application. We really appreciate you for coming. This is we count this a privilege to have you here. For us, it is, we don't take this for granted. We just look forward to receiving some great applications from you. Feel free to send your application at any time. We believe with this section, we will be receiving some great applications from you, and of course, applications that probably surpassed our own expectations. And please just note that with time, you will get to receive more updates from us as we move on. Just as part of the information that you need to take away from this, we are also looking forward to giving you another opportunity to learn more about these things that we are doing. And so we are still organizing the second webinar. I think this is one of its kind. Most grants actually stop at first webinar, but we feel that now we have given you 1 or 2 weeks since the launch to have gone through the documents, read through them, and now we have organized this webinar to properly guide you on how to develop your own applications. We're also hoping that for those who have not started, for those who have started, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you will have gone far, and then you probably will need, or you will have 1 or 2 questions. And so on the 4th of December, we'll be holding our second webinar. Please feel free to prepare to be part of it. And as you apply, please, if you have any question that you feel you would want to ask, please come to us on the 4th of December with those questions, and they will properly respond to. With this, we want to appreciate you for coming. We truly appreciate you for sparing the time to be part of this webinar, and we look forward to receiving your applications, and look forward to also having a time with you on the 4th of December. As David rightly mentioned, we have our email, the ETCF email. If there's anything you want to share with us, please kindly send an email and you'll be properly responded to. Thank you very much, and we just look forward to hear from you. Thank you, and bye for now.